My unmarried partner lives with me and my children who are 7, 12, and 18. He has 2 children aged 5 and 13, but they live with their mother. We've had his kids over whenever we can and I enjoy it. However, they are very different to mine, who are all mostly easygoing and respectful. And it has been just the 4 of us for most of their lives. His kids are very loud, destructive, and demanding often. We made the adjustment, and eventually they started staying over every other weekend. But his son, Spencer, has become harder to deal with over time. He'll blow up if he doesn't get his way, insult my son if he loses a game, goes into the bedrooms and takes things without asking, complains about every meal we make, expects us to buy him whatever he wants no matter cost, and generally acts like a spoiled brat. He can also be sweet, of course. He's a child and he's not evil, but this is fairly constant. We don't let it slide, but I also want to give him benefit of the doubt. He's 13, he could be acting out for lots of reasons with a weird family dynamic, I'm sure. I try my hardest to help him feel comfortable and heard //us, but his entitlement is rampant. It started to stress my kids out, and yesterday was the last straw for me. We were all about to go to the mall when my 12Y//O son asked if anyone had seen his birthday money. He had $100 saved, disappeared from his desk. Everyone, including Spencer, looked everywhere. Spencer even asked my son if he'd spent it and forgot, or if he'd left it at school, etc. Spencer then went outside to sit in the car alone and wait to leave. My partner went out to talk to him, which eventually led to getting him to empty his pockets. He had stolen the $100 to spend at the mall. My partner told him off, texted his mom about it and told me, then gave it back to my son. Quietly furious, we went out as planned after a talk with Spencer as to not ruin the day for the other kids. He didn't seem to feel guilty at all, even asked us to get him a $120 jacket while out. Once they were back at their mom's, I told my partner I don't want Spencer in the house anymore, at least for now. I do love his kids, and I don't want them to not see their dad. My partner has a house he doesn't use, so I suggested on those weekends we take the kids there for now. Then when any of mine aren't feeling it, they can go home and we can get some quality time, and so his kids don't have to share his attention as much. He thinks this is dramatic, an overreaction. I've told him I'm open to other ideas but won't budge from my stance. I don't want my kids feeling like they need to guard their space or to be uncomfortable in their own home. My youngest has autism and gets overstimulated with them around sometimes. He gets along W//5Y//O but needs breaks. My 12Y//O is quite anxious and 18Y//O has bipolar disorder. They're introverted, home is their safe haven and weekends are the only real free time they have. But I also don't want to be unfair to his kids. I'm a 19-year-old F with 6 older siblings. My parents spent most of my childhood spending money they didn't have on my siblings, so by the time I hit my teenage years, I realized I was probably going to have to fend for myself financially when I turn 18. I started babysitting and doing odd jobs around my neighborhood when I was 14, and eventually got part-time jobs during the school year. By the time I was 16, I was working 3 jobs in the summer and 2 in addition to school. When my parents told me they couldn't pay for college, I'd already earned enough, along with scholarships, to be able to put myself through college and have plenty left over. I've continued to work during the school year, and have been able to make money during quarantine by tutoring online. The issue began a few months ago, when my eldest sister got married. My parents spent $30 grand on her wedding, taking out a second mortgage to do so. To make matters worse, my dad was furloughed 6 days after the wedding. They'd effectively dug themselves into a hole they couldn't get out of. 2 weeks ago, my mom texted me for the first time since the wedding. She didn't say hi, ask how I was, or make any small talk. She just said, "Your dad and I need a favor. When can we call you?" I'd expected this. None of my elder siblings are doing well financially, and they've exhausted all other loan options, both from family and the bank. I figured they would text me, ask me to loan them a few thousand, and promise to pay it back when they could figure things out. I was absolutely willing to pitch in a few thousand, and had even considered giving them some of my tutoring jobs so they could make some extra cash. I was not, however, expecting them to demand I give them all the money, close to $40,000. I'd made from the ages of 14 to 18. The exact statement my mom had made was, "You made that money under our roof. We were the ones who allowed you to work, so you only have it because of us anyway. We bought you food and clothes for 18 years. That money is only a fraction of what you owe us," and so on. I said that food, clothes, and shelter were the very minimum. It's what they signed up for when they chose to become parents. I didn't ask for any of it, etc. They responded by telling me that if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have the life I have today. I said they were being ridiculous, and hung up. Since that day, both, along with 2 of my siblings, have continuously hounded me about giving them what is rightfully theirs. My siblings, who have never been asked to give them money, are still professing that it's my job as their kid to take care of them. I told them they wouldn't see a cent of my hard-earned money, and have no right to make such a request. I'm torn. I feel awful for refusing to help them out, but on the other hand, this was their fault. I feel I shouldn't be responsible for fixing their mess. I met her 2 years ago when we worked together and quickly became very close. She helped me through the darkest times of my life. I was mid-split with an abusive ex when we met. And I helped her through some really tough and unimaginable things. There were lots of rumors at the time we were seeing each other, and everyone assumed we were an item. But for the past 2 years our relationship has been purely platonic. She was my best friend, and up until a few weeks back I don't think we'd even ever hugged. Fast forward to a week ago, she came over for dinner and wine. This is very common and normal. We had more than usual and she was over the limit, so couldn't drive, so she stayed the night. We slept in the same bed but apart, and no physical contact again. It was completely normal and just as expected. We somehow didn't get up and ended up staying in bed until 10 p.m. the next day just talking. Sometime during that evening she got upset about something going on in her life. I rubbed her back while telling her everything will be okay, and then we just cuddled. Probably the first bit of real physical contact between us, but nothing was sexual. Didn't feel weird, and she went home and it was all okay. This last weekend we had a hiking holiday planned, where we'd be sleeping in her van. She has a converted Transit. It's 1 bed, but we thought we'd be fine. First night it was freezing, ending up cuddling and spooning, but again didn't feel sexual. Second night is where it all went a bit wrong. We drank a bit too much and the spoon ended up getting carried away. It seems to be a joint thing, and before I knew it we were kissing and touching each other everywhere. It was a bit of a frenzy of this for about 15 minutes until we both stopped and realized what we just did. After this we spoke a little and asked if either of us regretted it. We both said we didn't, but it was odd. She got upset and I told her it was okay. It didn't change anything and we could just draw a line under it. We woke up the next morning and it happened again. We didn't talk too much, but then went for a walk, and then just before we headed home we ended up all over each other again. We were completely naked but again stopped, cuddled and lay there. We both agreed it was a "what happens in X, stays in X" type event. It was a really long trip home, 6 hours plus. During this she would rest her head on my hand on lap ECT, and it seemed very different to our usual dynamic. When we stopped at services for breaks we seemed to walk arm in arm. We kept kissing on and off, but it seemed strangely normal. We arrived back at her home. She lives with her dad at the moment, but just before I left she kissed me again and thanked me for a wonderful weekend. The following day she came over to get some stuff I took home with me. We end up just cuddling, kissing, feeling and so on again, but she has dinner with a friend and we stop it there. She goes on her way. This should feel really weird and strange, but it felt completely normal, and we both discussed it that it was so odd it felt normal. Yesterday she turned up unannounced at my place, which is not a normal thing, with coffee and donuts. We end up talking, cuddling, kissing again, and then we end up talking about what this is, the big problem. Neither of us were sure. She got panicky and burst out in tears and left. She said she was really scared and her words were, "I think I will end up pushing you away and hurting you, and I don't want to do that to you." I told her I would come and see her later and talk. I drove to her house, but her ex was there, another slight issue. They broke up 6 years ago, stayed close friends. He is a lovely bloke, but in his head he is certain they will get married and have children. She's had the conversation with him, but he seems to shut it off. If he found out she was seeing anyone he would get extremely angry. But there's so much family history intertwined between the both, it's really complicated. For that reason, she has avoided seeing anyone in the past 6 years. The reason he turned up is she hadn't responded to him since the night we kissed. I went home when I saw his car and just said she could come to mine to chat later. She turned up, sad and very emotional. She explained she ran off because she is terrified of losing our friendship. I said let's just cut the romance out. Draw a line under it and be friends again, but she seemed to not speak much when I said this. I asked if her ex was the issue. She said it was nothing to do with us but a whole other issue. But that was not impacting what was going on between us. We sat quietly, hugged, and I tried to reassure it would be okay, and I wasn't going to start hating her for whatever reason. And I am completely fine with just being platonic friends again. We both agree and say whatever happens we stay friends and nobody gets hurt, but we will pull back from the more physical side. I woke up this morning really panicky. I have no idea where we are, where we stand, and absolutely terrified of losing our friendship. I don't know what to do or say. I felt sick to my stomach and can't eat at the thought of this. She is coming around later to collect some of her clothes she left last night, and I am thinking I need a plan of what to say / do. I cannot lose my best friend. She is absolutely everything to me, but I am worried we crossed a line and there's only one eventual outcome which won't be good. I am living with my family. It's me, a 15-year-old girl, my twin brothers who are 17, and my parents. My dad cusses a lot, and so do my older brothers. But apparently the standards are different for me. My dad overheard me saying a couple cuss words when I was on the phone with my friends, and he got mad at me for my language and for how trashy and unladylike it was. This wasn't the first time he called me, and only me, out for bad language. But it was the one that frustrated me the most because I could tell there was a double standard. I thought of calling him out on his language and hypocrisy, but then I had a different idea. I said that, yeah, it was a bad habit I was forming and didn't want to make a pattern, because if I got in the habit of cussing a lot, that wouldn't make me come off well when I start getting jobs or going to college. And as I was growing up, I wanted to learn how to speak respectfully and intelligently. But it was hard to keep from bad habits when I heard him and my brothers having potty mouth syndrome so often. They're setting an example whether they realize it or not. So I wanted to work on things for myself, but also together as a family. I suggested we make a swear tax where if anyone swears in front of anyone else who's participating, they give $1 to each person who heard them. I'd want that rule for myself because it would keep me accountable, and I'd really like it if the family joined me for it. So my dad said he'd join, and so would my mom. They got my brothers to be a part of it too. They didn't really have a choice. My parents decided to make it a rule. I know it's kinda petty, but I wanted to make the point that my dad and brothers swear a lot and I almost never do. In the few months we've had the rule, I've gotten about $250 from hearing my dad and brothers cuss, and have not sworn once. It's kinda making my brothers angry because they often cuss when they're mad, and I ask them for money, so they get madder and cuss more. So I get more money until they shut up. My dad actually got mad at me too. He was having some drinks, calling his brother and talking. And I came over after and asked for $18. He actually said he wouldn't give me that much, and there should be a cutoff. He gave me $5, which sends a weird message. Like swearing is bad, unless you want to swear a lot, then it's cool. I did it because I know I swear the least out of my family, but I was the only one getting in trouble for it.